third bit is embrace the change and the inevitable mistakes, because it isn't going to be perfect first time. You're going to make mistakes, and you're going to make a lot of them. You know, you look at basketball players, football players, you know, all that kind of stuff. They didn't just start scoring baskets and goals and so on. They practice, and the amount they would have missed must be in the thousands. Embrace the change and the mistakes. It's important that we embrace them. And then the last one is learn, adapt, repeat. Learn from the mistake, adapt what you need to, and go again.
Welcome one more time to the podcast, Allow Yourself. This is a podcast, remember, that this is a space to breathe, to listen, to see beyond differences. Here, we are to explore different truths through hearing and not labeling. So, beyond sex, religion, politics, we find what really unites us, that is our shared humanity. And today's guest is an amazing guy, David Jarvis, a multi-award winning speaker, Invictus Games gold medalist, British Army veteran, and parathlete. Through his story of resilience, mainly resilience and strength, David inspires others to overcome adversity and thrive. So let's welcome David Jarvis to the show. Hi, David.
Hi,
How are
thanks for the
you
intro.
doing?
I'm good, thank you. A bit humbled by that intro, though. Thank you.
Okay, so facts don't lie. So yes,
True.
that's why we have been in live, and mainly we have allowed ourselves to be so. Just enjoy it. We were talking before about the being just not the gold medalist of the Invictus Games. That, by the way, I had to look it up. What's Invictus Games, because I didn't know. So, if you want to explain a little bit, what's Invictus
Of course, yeah.
Games?
Well, if you picture something like the Olympics or the Paralympics, it's a multi-day, multi-sport event for people living with impairments, both seen and unseen. But the key difference between the Paralympics and the Invictus Games is it's for serving and ex-serving personnel. So people who've served there in their respective countries' armed forces, and who've gotten injured or ill, or basically the people who are on what they call they're part of the what they call the WIS community, the wounded, injured, and/or sick community. It's obviously the list nobody wants to be on, but this was identified about 10 years ago. So I think last year was the 10th anniversary, and there's been 7 iterations of the game, so a little bit more often than the Paralympics. But the other key difference between it is that you can only do it twice in your lifetime, irrelevant of sporting ability. So if you're going to do it, then you've got to get the most out of it as well. So, which will hopefully link in nicely to a bit more of my story, which it will come to in terms of some of the things that have happened and challenges I've dealt with. But I'm not going to jump the gun on that yet. So,
but that's a very inspirational and motivational games, just for people that usually are in adversity, in hard adversity after being in service. It's really nice to have that motivation and allow the acknowledgement and recognition also of service. So when you hear the expression "allow yourself," what comes to mind?
Well, I mean, take how the introduction you gave me to that. Thank you again, by the way. It was very nice of you. When I left the military, I struggled. I've only been out for nearly 4 years now, so not really a big amount of time. And I struggled mentally because I was in the military for over 2 decades. Sorry, go over there. My dog's chewing something too close to the camera. I struggled getting used to that change in life, in the way, the lifestyle I was used to. It's not just a job, it's a whole lifestyle when you're in the military. Your camaraderie, the people nearby, when you're having a bad day, there's always someone, kicking your ass, to do stuff and so on. And we have a saying around the work as well: you're paid by the day, not by the hour. So you're on it till the job's done. You don't just close things up at 5 o'clock because that's the end of the working day. So getting used to life as a civilian was a real struggle. and I got a bit of help from an array of like veterans charities and such like, quite a few different ones that then led me to the Invictus Games, and that was the key difference that got me on the right path, if that makes sense. But it wasn't until after the games that my local council asked me to go and speak at a school and go and talk to the kids and tell them about my adventures and stuff. And I prepared a little PowerPoint with a few slides and photographs and brought a few bits and pieces, memorabilia and medals and stuff like that. And I think that's where I really started learning that I've got a lot of value in my stories, which I didn't put any value in before, if that makes sense. And that's ultimately what led me to today. You know, if the kids hadn't asked all the questions and been so interested and made me realize that the people want to hear about this stuff, then I'd probably never be doing this and we'd never have met, you know. So yeah, that was probably the moment, I think. And I'll probably say it was around about a year ago now, in fact, give or take a few days, I'd say, when I did that talk in the school. Yeah, that's when I really started thinking, you know, I've got a lot of value. I can just telling people my experiences and where I've been and what I've had to go through and how I got through it as well, more importantly, which is ultimately why I want to help people to get through their own challenges and just build that personal resilience, you know.
Well, that's beautiful. So you allow yourself to be a civil and not just a military guy. And we civils that we have never been in the military take that for granted. We don't know that it's a big change of living, of way of living. And sometimes, I don't know, but I'm asking you, we take it for granted that we don't even stop to ask if you need something, if you feel weird, if you feel out of space, I don't know, out of place, that it's a completely different place. So how do you feel it? You really had to allow yourself to be in that place?
So the key thing for me was I learned a real valuable lesson in the difference between responsibility and accountability. So in a nutshell, responsibility, you can delegate responsibilities to anybody. You know, you can ask people to do jobs for you. You can ask people to pay a bill for you. You can ask, I could ask my other half to walk the dog. You know, it can be any number of different things. You know, but accountability is ultimately where the buck stops, where it can't go any further, where you can't delegate it out to anybody else. It's up to me, you know. So, for example, if I stop paying the mortgage on my house, it's not going to be my wife's fault. It's not going to be the kid's fault. It's not going to be anyone. It's going to be my fault. It's going to be me. You know, that's ultimately what accountability is. When I got out of the military, I'd taken for granted, taking your word there, that what the sorts of things the military did for me. You know, being able to depend on having people around me all the time, so that if I was having those bad days, someone could just give me a nudge and say, hey, come on, let's go for a run, you know, or let's go to the gym, or right, we need to get this job done. I need you to think about the X, Y, and Z, and so on. I didn't have to worry about making my own decisions or making those leaps, if that makes sense. And that first period of time in the military, getting out of the military, sorry, so that first year, I think the benefit of being medically discharged as opposed to a normal discharge is that I was directed towards the charities, if that makes sense. So, for example, combat stress, I get a lot of help with that. I've had a lot of help from them around my PTSD, and they were great, you know. And he smelt something. Here's my bed. Sorry.
You can invite it. You can invite him to the screen too. It's fine for me.
I can introduce you. Gizmo, come.
Yeah.
Come.
It's part of your life. Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, and that was one example. You've then got the likes of SAFA. They're very big on helping veterans and families and so on. The Invictus Foundation as well, Royal British Legion, Poppy Scotland. There's a whole host of different ones that helped and that I was involved with. And I return that now, and I do a lot of stuff for charity for them now. But we're going to regret this now, aren't we?
Yeah.
But if it wasn't for the medical discharge, I probably wouldn't have reached out. I wouldn't have gone looking for that help, if that makes sense. It was as a result of various challenges that occurred over that time. Like, for example, we had to sell the old house, because we had too small a house. we had another child coming. We needed a third bedroom because I was working from home as well. And then we then had, so we were, there's lots of little things here, by the way, but my second daughter was born in the middle of Storm Arwen, which was a really bad storm that hit the northeast of Scotland, caused quite a lot of damage, you know, to a lot of different things, lots of people without power for a long time. And at the same time, I was trying to learn to get my new job, which meant learning to write a CV for the first time in over 2 decades, which is quite challenging. Interview techniques, figuring out what I was going to do as well, and all of this at the same time as Storm Arwen happening, dealing with my injuries, the prepping for interviews, trying to move from my base to my home. My base was in England at the time, which is give or take around about a 7-hour drive, give or take, from home. So it's all quite challenging, you know, when you're away from family and that support network as well. It just, the long story of it is, sorry, there's a long description, but the short story of it, I should say, is that point when I got out, it's like a cut off. It's like the army just chops, you know, the day you're out, that's it. You're no longer in the army. You don't get any more support. That's it, over. So if I hadn't been put onto the charities, I wouldn't have got the support to get to, you know, where I am now, I suppose. But that was the real lesson between responsibility and accountability. You know, I had to start taking up the mantle, and it didn't just happen. It took time, but it was a real lesson in like paying the bills, for example. You get used to the fact the army covers things like your local council tax and various other bits and pieces. It comes out your wages straight to source before it comes to your bank. And then all of a sudden you've then got to take things like that on as well. So, and there's a whole multitude of different things, you know, like that. But that was the real lesson, learning the key difference between responsibility and accountability. And that also plays into other parts of my story, which we'll get into in a little bit as well. Again, try to jump ahead.
Yes, it's hard to imagine the cut, you know. It's like the life put you in pause, and it's like a morning path that, who am I without that, without the army? I don't know myself. Who am I without all these big institution behind? I think that some of the people that are listening have been through that with the company they work in. That who am I without the company? It's allowing ourselves, even in a struggle, is to walk the path of really discovering who we really are without all that defined us before. Because I assume that you presented yourself. I'm David Jarvis from the military, or from whatever, that was your last name. So this is a beautiful story, because there are, if we stop in so many stages of your path, we can really feel how you allow yourself and was open with the help of the charities and the others, even when you were so down, how to raise and how to also transform your learning to your message. Because even if you didn't realize it and you didn't plan it, as you said, to speak to the kids, that will become your job, let's say, or your work, or it's like that. It's like we don't really understand what lives bring us. Like Steve Jobs used to say, that we cannot see connect the dots forward. We can only stop and see and connect our dots looking backwards. So
that's it. I agree. I'm a firm believer there's no such thing as a perfect plan, but a reasonable plan will help you weather the chaos. And I say the missus, my other half, hates me when it hits that one, because I use it all the time. So I try to I spread my efforts out on lots of different things, so that, you know, when chaos does happen, I've got a foundation in place. You know, I've kind of learned to do that. Going back to what you were saying before about that change in life, I think another simple way of looking at it as well is in the military, you have little routines that you go through. When you start in the army, the whole idea is they break and make you, because they need you to be disciplined, they need you to follow orders, and so on and so forth. So they drill in these basic routines and habits, simple things like you get up in the morning, you have your shave, you polish your boots, I've got my old military boots literally sat right here, coincidentally, because I was out with the dog earlier. It's those sorts of things. So when you get out, that routine becomes redundant all of a sudden. You don't need to do that every morning because no one's going to inspect you or check your uniform that you've ironed it and all that kind of stuff. So it's coming up with that new routine and that new way of life. And it's the simple things right up to the complex things. And yeah, how do you do it?
And when is the time that you felt that that support, let's say when you needed something to come back to yourself?
So I think the real kick, or the first real kick I had, I suppose, was I'd already gotten out. I'd been out about 4 or 5 months, I think, at this point. I'd had a car on finance whilst I was in the military. So the original plan was we were expecting our second daughter. She was born in the end of 2021, and I was out in the January of 22. And we planned to be in at least another 3 or 4 years. The aim being to get my youngest old enough where she would start school, and then we put down roots so we can stay in one place for the duration of her school years. That was the idea. So that would put me up to about 24 years, 25 years in the military, give or take. But obviously that got completely kiboshed, without with no real plan of what we were going to do. So come March, we realized we needed a bigger house because we only had a 2-bedroom end terrace type thing, to start with. And we had we already had my eldest daughter. She was 3 at the time. So myself and the wife were in one room, daughter was in the other one. We had the second daughter. At this point, she was obviously in a cot in our room at the time being, but we were planning ahead. And then I'd gotten a job as a project manager working from home. So I needed office space. So we're like, right, we need to get a new house. How do we do it? I just me having no clue about credit scores and how finance worked and everything like that. I had no clue at all. I got a real sharp lesson in what I needed to do. So we started going through the motions of trying to get a new mortgage, realized I could only get so much because I had a car on finance. So, and I'd gone beyond my means, if that makes sense. From when I was in the military, we had, that job security. So I was like, I could afford to spend a bit more than what I probably need, and I basically had to sell the car at a loss because we had to pay back the finance. So I lost about 3 or 4 grand in that. We had to do that because if we didn't, the credit score was going to be awful and we wouldn't get the mortgage. We sold the house we were in. My wife and kids had to go and stay with my in-laws because there was a problem with the mortgage and it took a further 6 weeks, I think, to get the actual mortgage. So in essence, I was homeless for 6 weeks and I had to sleep on mum and dad's couch because they live about half an hour away from here. Whilst my wife and kids went down to my in-laws because they had space for them. And that was the real shock because basically first time in X amount of time, in quite a number of years without a car, what I'd had to do to get the mortgage sorted and change how my finances looked, and what I had to learn about finance really quickly in order to make it happen. But it very nearly didn't happen.
What did it make? How did you feel on that situation?
Well,
because we don't know what we don't know.
Yeah, no, agreed. Well, the honest answer is excuse my French, but I was shitting myself. I was scared, because I very nearly buggered it all up for my family in a nutshell because I just didn't understand finance, didn't understand how houses work, didn't understand the impact on my credit with the credit reference agencies and that kind of stuff in terms of the money I had. The fact I just changed jobs as well, obviously that doesn't look good either because you don't have that job security to demonstrate you've not been in it for 2 years or whatever, and I just taken all that for granted in the military. I knew that the money going into my account was mine. I could do with it what I wanted. All the main bills had come out. Food was covered, the electric was covered, all that jazz. There's nothing to worry about, naively, linking back to that responsibility, accountability thing, I learned very quickly the hard way that I was accountable for all this, and I nearly nosed it right up for my family, which would not have been good. So thankfully, I got it working, but that was the first real kick, if that makes sense, because it wasn't about me, it was about my family. So I can punish myself as much as I wanted to. But,
and how did you come back to your center? Is
So-
that when you started to do sports and compete, or?
Well, I'd been doing sport and that through the military for a long time. I was a physical trainer in the military since as a second job because I was a communicator for a primary job. But since 2004, I've been a qualified physical training instructor as well. So I did that, throughout my career. And I actually got serious injuries to my knees earlier on in my career. So I actually took up cycling to build muscle around my knees and protect them, so I could stay in the military. And that's what got me onto cycling. And that was in 2015. So, and I just started by going a mile to and from work. That's how it started, and then 6 months later, I was doing 5 miles each way, and then it was 10. And then 18 months later, after starting in September 2016, I did my first race, and I was absolutely rubbish. Got dropped by the peloton and lapped repeatedly on this race. I was completely rubbish. But I got the bug. I enjoyed it. And then I got into the training. Started taking it really seriously, focusing my efforts on one thing rather than doing lots of different things. Like, as a PTI, I was what we call a sport Billy, because I was fit. I could do bits of everything, but I didn't focus on any one thing. So I was never particularly good at anything. Jack of all trades, master of none, if that makes sense. So when I focused it all on the cycling between 2016 and 2017, I went back to the same race the following year, and I won the novice race, the one I'd lost at the year before. And then a year later, I went back to try and win the elite race. And then a year later after that, I won that, and then it just kept growing from there. But
when you lost in the first time that you intended to do that, I know you enjoy it. You said that, but how did you feel in order to allow yourself to go back, train, and next time? Because usually people that are successful in life, that have that, let's say, in the career, taking it for granted, once you are not one of the best and that you are one of the last, feel ashamed, feel a loser, feel how did it make you feel at that time?
So when I got told the news about my knees, so it was in the June of 2014 that I got given the news by the doctors that I was going to be permanently downgraded in the military, which is not a great position to be in when you're a physical trainer. And I'd running and carrying weight in the military, typical things you see squad soldiers doing, with your rucksacks on, with all the weight in, and they're doing all this marching and navigating and so on and so forth. Being told that you've got to kind of stop doing impact training, or you've really got to manage your impact training, anything relating to impact, it's a kick in the nuts. And it actually took 6 months. I didn't actually go and buy the bike until the December of that year, and my wife had a bit to do with that. It was quite a lifestyle change, So when I started cycling and gradually built it up to the point of that race, I didn't feel bad about the fact I hadn't done well performance-wise, because I felt like I'd turned myself inside out. I'd really tried to do well, but I didn't understand the mechanics of how peloton actually works, the idea of slipstreaming behind another rider and things of that nature, So working with other people, I didn't get it. I thought it was like running, it's a solo effort, So I looked at it and went, right, I've already been through this lifestyle change. I've already had that challenge. I don't want it again. I'm not changing something else, because I could have the same issue. If I changed to another sport, I could have the same problem. And so what do I need to do to make this one better? So that's when I started really looking at how to get better at riding, not just getting physically more capable, strength-wise and performance-wise, but also looking at the mechanics of how to do it better, maintenance-wise of the bike, making sure there was no problems mechanically speaking. So I learned more about how to make sure the bike would work every time I got on it, the tire pressures, the braking points, so you get the corner right to maintain speed through it, things about all that kind of stuff, and then how to work as part of a team as well. And that's ultimately, it was the drive was I just didn't want to go through another lifestyle change, if that makes sense. I'd already experienced
it makes
crap. So yeah.
Yes, it makes a lot of sense, because we tend to jump from one thing to the other where we don't achieve what we want, or we get there as planned. So we say, oh, I'm not good at it, so I jump to another thing to try. So we are mediocre in a lot of things, but we don't are good at anything, as you say it. We know how to do a lot of things, but we are not really good or excellent at anything.
Yeah.
So this particular thing, event, to allow yourself, just because you didn't want another life change, but just the point that you allow yourself to stay in the same field, in the same lifestyle, in the same place, but just mastery where you are, the presence. No, today they call it mindfulness, no, just to be in the present and allow yourself. And it's really interesting how that small event, that deciding, that decision is not an event, it's a decision to stay here and make myself better. And in this is a whole life changing. Even if you say that is, I don't want another lifestyle, that is a life changing. To be present, to be in yourself, to come to your center. And I can tell you that not long ago it happened to me that I was looking, where am I going? What's my target? What is the and I just felt like frustrated that I've been here and it's not, and I should here and it's not, and so many places, and I said, okay, whatever. I don't see the target anymore. I will master what I'm doing and how I am doing. So my target is to be in peace and to master who I am right now. So it's a huge change of mindset, not to look outside, but to just flip, like flip it over is my book, like flip it inner to your inner side. So, and how did it go?
Well, I mean, I didn't enter. I think I don't think I entered another race at all. So the race I entered was the championship race for the branch of the military I was in. So I entered. So they do it every year, and I entered the following year, and I didn't enter anything else. I didn't do any other races. I don't think that in 2017. I think that was the first race for me for that year, and I basically put all the guns into it, if that makes sense. So it was literally the same one, and I just thought I didn't go there with the expectation to win, but I went there knowing I was better prepared, if that makes sense, because I put in a lot of training. I'd really turned myself inside out quite a lot of times on the bike, and I'd spent a lot of time learning as well. Like I said, learning all the mechanics of it all, learning all the theories behind it, how to do things better, and so on. And yeah, I think when I won, I was like, you know what, I mean, don't get me wrong, it was still a novice race. It wasn't like it was professional or anything like that, but it was,
It's
it
not
just made me
you're not just one. Just don't be so humble. Tell us what you won.
Well, it was the novice championship race, the annual championship race, and I was really pleased with myself because it's the first time I was actually on the podium for anything I'd done. Because, like I said, when I was a PTI, when a physical training instructor, I was a jack of all trades, master of none. I just got involved in lots of different things, you know. So I was lucky if I was in the top 10, you know, for anything I did normally, you know. But getting that was a real sort of, I was like, right, now what, you know? So that was like the novice race of the championship. So there was 3 races on that day. One was the novice, one was the ladies, and one was the masters, the elites, you know. So I was like, right, now I'm going for the elite one. I want to win the big one, you know, the overall, and be the core champion, you know. So I then ramped my training up even more. I started entering more races in 2018, and I actually won quite a few more races. You know, other things in civilian races as well, league events, things like that. You know, no particularly big event in itself. And then I went back to the championship race the following year, 2018, and they actually did 2 things that year. They did a prologue, a time trial, and then they did the race afterward, the criterium race in the afternoon. So the time trial in the morning and the crit race in the afternoon. And a crit race is a criterium race. It's kind of like the last 30 kilometers of a Tour de France stage. So really fast, intense, chaotic, you know, and it's just on a closed circuit. So it's away from the traffic and that. And I was actually 4th fastest in the time trial. So I was one of the favorites in the race, you know, and this is the elite race. This is not the novice one anymore. This is the big one. And I'd really been trying, I'd really been going, and we got 2 laps in. And it turned out we'd got a little bit of rain that day, and the track got a bit greasy. And I'd gone to attack at a certain point, and as we're coming around this corner, the bike slid out from under me, if that makes sense. And I actually hit the deck hard enough. I found out afterwards that I actually broke my wrist, and I bent the shifters, on the handlebars. I bent the shifters in on the bike. but adrenaline kicked in straight away. I got back on the bike. An actual spectator came over and helped me bend the shifter back, the gear shifter back in again. And I took off after the peloton just to go and catch them up. And I was that committed. I didn't know that I'd broken the wrist at the time, but I just felt like raging. I was like, I've got to get back on it again, because I really wanted to do well. So I got another lap trying to catch them. And we're coming back around the next fast section of the track. And as I was coming around the corner, it'd been raining a bit more. There'd been rubbish bins that were stored a little bit higher up away on this hill, and the rain had washed some of the muck down the hill, if that makes sense, onto this part of the road. So as I came around that corner doing about 30 miles an hour, the bike slid out from under me because the track had gotten greasy. It turned out several other people had crashed during the race later on. But because I was going so fast trying to catch the peloton, I hit the deck at a rate of knots. I actually broke my shoulder, cracked a couple of ribs, hit my head so hard because my shoulder hit first and then my head hit the deck second. I actually split my helmet down one side. And I don't remember someone stopping to help me get to the side of the road. But the next thing I remember is I'm sat upright. Someone's looking at me going, "Are you okay?" I hit the deck pretty hard. But yeah, it turned out I think 8 people crashed on the same section because of that grease, the grease that had been created, which is a bit rubbish. But so I was disappointed, but at the same time, excuse my French, shit happens. You know what I mean? It's the nature of it. I think the real kick in the nuts is that because I had 2 crashes in that one race, quite bad crashes as well. My chain of command at the time were not supportive at all. They thought because I'd crashed that I was rubbish at it. I was no good, and they were like trying to encourage me to quit and just stop cycling. Wow. You're obviously bad at this. You've had really bad crashes. I was off work for a couple of weeks, I think, and I was on crutches for how long? About 3 weeks, I think. And my arm was all slinged up, and I was a mess. I've got some cracking war wounds to show the kids when they grow up. But I think it was what happened with the chain of command afterwards that was the real mental challenge, because I was basically being told I was rubbish at it. Everyone was saying, "Oh, you're rubbish at it because you crashed," and that was the real challenge afterwards, not the crash or the injuries or the fact I hadn't done well in the race.
It's usually is the pressure, the outside pressure. Yeah. Is usually that pressure that unmotivate us and drive us to quit. So what did you do to overcome that pressure? Because it's not small.
No, it was challenging, to be perfectly honest. I mean, I was off the bike. The injuries were bad enough. I was actually off the bike for about 3.5 months. Wow. Like no riding at all. And when I did get back on, so that was September of 2018, I think, something like that. And it was roughly about end of November, I think, that I got back on the bike again, maybe early December, I think, something like that. And then the following year, so we're now going into 2019 now. So I was just like, no, I'm not settling for that. I've done remembering back to doing that lifestyle change after my knees. I was like, I'm not doing that again. I'm not just quitting because of this. If you go running, you can trip up and sprain your ankle, pull the muscle, scuff your knee and whatever. It doesn't mean you're bad at running. It just means you've had a bad day. And I was like, if I'm on a bike doing a rate of knots on the bike, and I come off, it's gonna hurt. Of course it is. You're messing with concrete and you're wearing lycra. What do you think's gonna happen? So I was like, right, let's be realistic about this. I just need to take what I can and learn from that and move forward. And I did. So I then got back into the league racing that I'd done the previous year. Started getting similar results, winning more races again. Unfortunately, I then had another crash. This time as a result of someone knocking me off. But I landed on the other side. So I've actually got war wounds on both sides of my body. But
I want to stop you there a little bit, just to, you pass fast in the now what? And in the, I need to move forward. For a lot of people, it's very hard to get to that decision. Now what? Because, what life is trying to tell me, I'm a poor guy, I just broke here and broke there, and I'm look all what happened to me in life. And stop and say, yeah, life stopped you, like 3 months that you have to do whatever you needed to do to come back. But what is the move forward motivation? What is your inner strength in your mind? Because really, what really matters, if I can listen correctly to what you're saying, despite all the pressure that I have outside, despite what everybody is telling me, the story I'm telling myself is different. So I'm listening to the story I'm telling myself. I'm not listening to the. So, what is that story you're telling yourself that, oh, I need to move forward?
I think it was just that at the time, because yeah, it's a good point you mentioned there. It's everybody was telling me, I got a reputation because I crashed so much, even though it was only really the two at the time.
The crasher.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I just had that reputation. I mean, you look at some of the big names in cycling, and in terms of like the pro cyclists, like Geraint Thomas, for example, I think it was that year or the year later, he got the Tour de France. He got the yellow jersey. How many crashes he's had? I'm trying to think of other names. There's loads of different people, that do it. And I was like, well, they're not crap at cycling because they've had a couple of crashes. So, it's just my chain of command at the time just didn't understand. And I don't think they understand the struggle I'd had with that lifestyle change, with my knees as well. And I was just like, you know what? I'm just not going to listen to this. I'm not listening to other people anymore. I just need to focus on what I need to do. And I think the other key thing for it was that running, when before my knees packed in, running was my freedom, my release. Excuse me. It was, when I deployed to different places, or went on training exercises or just anywhere, the running kit was the first thing that went in my suitcase. I could just put my running kit on and just go and get lost. The bike gave me that back. So when I started doing it, even though it was only a mile, it gave me that freedom again. So when they told me you had to stop doing your cycling, stop your running, sorry, getting on the bike 6 months later and starting to do that, it just started giving me that freedom. And that's, even today, that's my safe space, as we call it, is a section of road that's like really quiet, that's a few miles away from my house. And that's the kind of, safe space is something that we've used when I go and do the talks with the doctor from Combat Stress, who helped me with the PTSD, and that is that place you can go to get calm, if that makes sense. And being on the bike, just like when I used to go running, was where I got my calm, if that makes sense. My freedom, I could just forget the world and just, the idea of me trying to turn myself inside out going up a hill, it's just me and the bike. The lead feeling in my legs at the top of the hill is, it just used to make me feel great. I used to enjoy that. But because of how...
It's when you're talking to yourself.
Yeah.
You're having a conversation with yourself and there is nothing there, you're present. So that's
it.
you.
Yeah. It's just you. Yeah, it's just my voice in my head and the wind in my ears. That's it. I never cared for trying to go down the hill fast or get top speeds. It was the hard bit, the getting up the hills, the trying to put the power down. I've never been an adrenaline junkie or anything like that. So the idea of being in close quarters with other cyclists in a peloton, and taking the risk, that was never the thing that did it for me. It was the fact that once I got out front, that was my freedom, and that was the incentive to keep going faster and stay away from the peloton, because I keep the freedom, and when my chain of command kept telling me to stop, it was like, well, where am I going to get that again? How am I going to get that? I'm not just going to stop doing this now just because I've had a boo-boo. You know what I mean? I mean, granted, it was a bad boo-boo, but it was...
it's like Denzel Washington says, if you fall 7 times, get up 8. No,
yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, Edison took him how many attempts to make the light bulb? If he'd have quit after the first couple, much longer would we have light bulbs? You know what I mean? So was it 1,000 attempts or something?
1,000, yeah.
Yeah.
He described that like, I'm just putting out what is not working. I'm not. I'm just discarding what is not working. Yeah.
Yeah. So look at what's not working. How do I make it work? What do I need to change? And I think that's one of the key things that I'm maybe better at than some and others is I find I can adapt to change really easily. Gizmo, sit. Sorry, you're getting playful.
Adapt.
That's
a critical word. How to adapt to the new situations. But before to adapt to the new situation, you need to accept the situation. So, and I think that's the hard part, to see, okay, I'm not where I was, it's like now I'm in a different situation, because you can see it. You can see it as a different situation, or you can see it as I'm holding back. I'm going backwards.
Hmm.
So it's really important, in order to adapt, to accept the situation, that from
Yeah.
here I can move forward, maybe another direction, but in the same field.
Hmm. It's so, I mean, having had time to reflect on that and obviously doing all the talks with people, I was able to sort of really look at, really reflect on how I did it, and what was it made me want to do that, and I kind of broke it down to the 5 sort of steps, if that makes sense. Sorry, 1 second. He's nibbling, playing with me, trying to bite my fingers. Gizmo,
Really nice. Yeah.
bed, bed. Sorry, Gizmo, bed, bed. He's just playing. Just what he's
He's a
22 weeks
civil
old.
now. He's not in the military.
No, he's
Yes.
22 weeks. He gets easily distracted. He just doesn't
Yeah.
sometimes. Doesn't.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Good.
yeah.
Fine.
Um,
Yeah.
where was I? Sorry. So yeah, 5 steps. So my diagnosis of diabetes, flashing forward very quickly, that really brought that home, that my process works. Because that's helped me get through it really easy. Really, I say easily. It wasn't easy. A lot, very quickly. Do you know what I mean? And adapt to that really quickly. And it was quite simple. The first step is do something simple. For me, it's go and get a brew. I've always got a mug in my hand, a cup of coffee or something nearby. It could be go and get a glass of water. It could be look at my ears now. It could be, I don't know, just going out for a walk. But then the second step is to, what I call it, give it a kiss. So most people have heard the acronym, keep it simple, keep it stupidly simple. And I just say, give it a kiss, just to, and it's to continue that simple theme. So however complicated the problem or challenge is, break it down and make it simple. So again, sort of flashing forward to the diabetes thing, I've been given so many pamphlets and all that kind of stuff. I just laid it all out on the table and looked at the next step, and that's how I did it. The next bit really is is Gizmo.
Is for who the listeners that are listening to us, it's the dog that it's
It's the dog. Yeah,
kissing. It's
he's
the dog
biting my
kissing,
fingers. You see.
biting the fingers, kissing David.
Yeah,
So it's part
yeah.
of the podcast. So welcome,
Mhm.
welcome also.
His name's Gizmo.
Yes.
Yeah, 22 weeks old, black lab. So yeah, so first step is do something simple. So for myself, it's go and get a brew, or a glass of water, or something like that. The second step is keep it simple. Give it a kiss. That's like, as I like to say it. The third step is understand the problem. That's why keeping it simple is so important, because if you overcomplicate it, you how are you going to get to that understanding? Gizmo. Sorry, random. Yeah, you get that understanding. If you understand the problem, that's you're halfway to a solution. The third bit is embrace the change and the inevitable mistakes, because it isn't going to be perfect first time. You're going to make mistakes, and you're going to make a lot of them. I go back to the point about Edison. I mean, how many attempts did he take to get to that? Look at anyone that's been successful. How many attempts did they get to it?
Mm-hmm.
You look at basketball players, football players, all that kind of stuff. They didn't just start scoring baskets and goals and so on. They practiced, practice, and the amount they would have missed must be in the thousands. Gizmo, no more. I want to keep all 5 fingers. Thank you.
See.
Yeah. So embrace the change and the mistakes. It's important that we embrace them, because we will make them. And then the last one is learn, adapt, repeat. Learn from the mistake, adapt what you need to, and go again. And then there we go. That is essentially what I was doing the whole time. It's some of it absolutely is awful experience. Like the one after that crash where I mentioned I didn't get the support I needed, and I was being encouraged to quit. That was really challenging. That because I was on my own. There was nobody there kicking my ass because I wasn't going out training or fixing the bike or fixing myself, and doing all the exercises I was getting from the physiotherapists and taking the painkillers and so on and so forth. It was me. I had to kick my own ass basically. And that was a real challenge because that was me sort of getting used to the mental, the external pressures, if that makes sense. So my lifestyle changed with my knees that was me getting over my own mental struggle, having to deal with that big change. And then the crash from the bike was other people, that challenge of having other people telling me that, you're obviously rubbish at this, stop doing it, blah, 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 so yeah.
And how did you, when were you invited to speak to the kids?
So flashing forward, so that was 2023. So in fact, like I said earlier, it was a year ago, it was 2 years ago. So Gizmo. Still biting my fingers, sorry. Just randomly saying random words. His name's Gizmo, so my kids named him. But
stimulating your fingers.
Yeah. He doesn't bite, he just nips. He just likes to, he's just playing, But what was it?
Talking to the kids.
That's it. So I'd come back from the Invictus Games. Obviously, I'd had that success. I'd won my gold medal. And in that particular year, there was only 2 of us from Scotland as part of the UK team. So there was 60 odd, I think it was 65 people in the team doing all different sports. But there was only 2 of us from Scotland. There was myself and another lass, a lady who lived, must be, I don't know, a couple of hours drive south of me. So it was kind of a bit of a thing. And in my area, my region, Aberdeenshire, I was obviously the only one. And my council were like, well, my local council, sorry, they were like, well, can we use you for a bit of PR and things like that? And that's where it came from, basically. And it was only my local primary school. You're talking primary 1 to 7. Got them all into the great big hall, in the sports hall, as it were. I'd laid on a table with all bits and pieces, memorabilia from my career, and obviously my medal. And I've got a few PowerPoint slides, like I said, as well. That went out the window very quickly because kids are like magpies. They see something shiny and they want to know about it, So all the hands went up and started asking me questions, and I realised very quickly that I just bring out photographs and things to show them and let them drive the conversation, or determine the direction of it. And that was where I really started learning the value in not just what I'd achieved, the month before, because like I said, it was October 2023 I did it, but it was what I'd done to get to that point, and all the places I'd been to over the years, and the things I'd done, the adventures, dare I say, I'd had, and all that kind of stuff. I didn't put any value in that at all when I got out, which is why it was so hard writing the CV, for example, because I didn't know how to translate my military work into something of value to civilian employers. How I was just doing my job. I was doing what I was told to do when I was in the military. But in the civilian world, they want to know how much responsibility you had, how much money were you responsible for, how much, what sort of things did you achieve, what successes did you have, all that kind of stuff. And I had to get a lot of help with things like that. Luckily, I got with an employer who was an ex-soldier as well, who'd been in the same branch as me. So he knew, because of the role I'd had, he knew what that meant and what I'd been doing to get it, and so on and so forth. So I had a little bit of fortune in that respect as well. But yeah, it was, the kids taught me a lot about everything else that I'd done, if that makes sense. So
yeah, if I zoom out, okay, and see the whole picture, what I see is from the military to the kids. It was like an in-between, learning to be in service as a civil, not as a military. So it's like falling, listening to all the voices, getting problems with the mortgage and the finance world. Is like all those is getting all the teachings that you needed in the in-between, right? To get to really be in service as a civil, because starting with kids, that multiplies, and when you can see the world through the eyes of kids, so then you really understand what everything that we have been taking for granted or not giving it value or obvious, it's not. Because for their perspective, that's all learning. It's the whole path they're going up. So,
yeah. And they're innocent as well. They'll ask anything. They're not shy. They'll ask anything they want as well. So yeah, definitely a good way to learn to speak, and be kept on your toes, is let kids drive the conversation.
Yeah, it makes you think, because we think the adults are the smart ones, but really the curiosity of the kids, it's what we really need to go back to, the curiosity of How did you do that? What did you feel? How the others react? And now that you're here with us, how are you feeling that you're not um, in the gold medalist, right? Because a lot of people, there are different reactions of the gold medalist. No, I assume, because I've never been a gold medalist. Uh, I, I feel like I'm very successful, but not in that term. Sports and are not really there. But what I've learned is that there are some that get to the point of, now what? All this year training for this, I achieved what I was looking for. Now what? And they can get into depression and something like that instead of teaching and showing. Like others are, don't talk to me, I'm a gold medalist. The they stay there. They stay there and they cannot look down or sideways. So that step that your counselor gave you, that opportunity that you took because you could say no to, that was your choice,
Yeah.
is a whole new world. That's a new life. That's a changing of life. That's a life changing. Is it?
Well, just going back to the point about being that gold medalist mentality. The crazy part of the story there is that when I first applied to the Invictus Games in the December of 2022, and then was accepted into the team in the January 23, I'd applied to just get the most out of the experience. I wanted to, get my motivation back, get into sport again, get in competitive sport again. I had no real aspiration to do well. I just wanted to get the most out of it, So I actually signed up to 4 different sports again to milk everything I could out of the experience. So I actually did cycling. I also did swimming.
Wow.
I did swimming, I did powerlifting, and I did what was the other one again? Cycling, swimming, powerlifting, and indoor rowing. Sorry, it distracted me again. So I did all these. I signed up for all these things with the aim of milking everything I could out of it, because they said you could sign up to 4 sports as long as they didn't coincide during the games. So if they're at the same time, you have to pick one. So I just thought, well, I'll just have a go at everything. I'll do my Sport Billy thing like I did. Excuse me, like I did when I was a PT, a physical trainer. I had no aspiration to do well. That only came about because of the diagnosis of diabetes, because I got pinged with type 1. Well, the backstory to that is, come April of 2023, I was training. We'd been done several training camps. I'd been and done rides in excess of 100 kilometers for different events and things like that as well. And at the end of April, I did one called a ride called the ETAP Loch Ness, which is a 100-kilometer cycle ride around Loch Ness in North Scotland. And I felt great. I did the whole thing, no real problems. But I noticed my power numbers weren't quite what they should be. Not enough to be worried about it, but I'd done it the year before, you see, so I noticed the difference. On the 1st of May, I weighed myself and I was 86.5 kilos. And I was weighing myself deliberately because I was trying to lose weight, before the games, because obviously less weight means a more power to weight ratio on the bike. So I can essentially go faster for less power. I started getting really lethargic all the time. I started losing weight. I was happy at first, but it started coming off really quickly, like a kilo a day. And by week 2, I called the doctors because I couldn't figure out what was causing the problem. I was going to the toilet more often. I was thirsty all the time. I had a burning sensation in my throat. I'd read about diabetes in my textbooks when I did my physical training studies and things like that, but I had no experience with it. I'd never come across anyone with it. I had no clue. So it never dawned on me that's what it could be. But I was eating 4,000 calories a day, to put this in perspective. And by the end of 2 weeks, I was at 70.2 kilos. 86.5, the 1st of May, 70.2. So I lost over, I think it was 26% or something like that, body weight in 2 weeks, whilst eating 4,000 calories a day, while still functioning around my house, doing the usual stuff, while still working, still training, lethargic all the time, not sleeping. So I was going to the toilet every 90 minutes without fail, like clockwork, day and night. So I wasn't sleeping properly either.
It's like, be careful what you ask for.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. Well, I just put it all down to the training, and I was going to the toilet more often because I was thirsty all the time. I was drinking my water, a logical reason. I was tired all the time because I wasn't sleeping, you know, a logical reason. So I gave up at the end of that 2-week point when I saw my weight, and I was like, I can't explain this anymore. And that's when I called the doctors. That's when the doctor was like, okay, this is what things could be. We need you to go for tests. And on the 19th of May, I was with the specialists in Aberdeen, my nearest city. It's about an hour's drive away. And that's when they said, it's type 1 diabetes. You know, I've got no real obvious history in my family that we know of. So we think it's linked to the stresses you went through when you got out the army. And it's just taken this time to hit you because you get something called a honeymoon period, which is where your pancreas starts working again, essentially, and releasing a little bit of insulin. And they think that I may have got it a year earlier and that I had the honeymoon period. And me losing all this weight was that point where it ended. And he just went, nope, sod off, we're not working for you anymore. And pancreas
honeymoon, sugar, huh?
Yeah,
you
exactly.
Sugar.
Yeah, I mean, I was eating 4,000 calories a day. I was eating more fruit, drinking more fruit juice, trying to get more energy in because I was tired all the time, thinking that was helping. But in reality, I was compounding the problem. But yeah, the doctors basically said to me, look, you know, you really need to think about what you're doing with the games because it was 3 months on. It was this was end of May. The games were in September, you know. They said, you really need to think about what you're going to do. You know, maybe it's best to drop out, focus on getting better, and, you know, maybe have a go at this, you know, in the future, you know. And my team manager was, you know, very supportive. They're all very supportive, and they kind of supported what the doctor had said. You know, it was a sensible advice, but I'd convinced, this was a Friday the 19th of May, 2023 at this point, and I'd convinced the doctor and my team manager to give me the weekend to think about it. I knew what I needed to do. I'd got all these pamphlets. I'd got my kitchen. Basically, I'd got up on the morning of the 20th of May. It was 5:30 in the morning. I'm usually awake very early anyway. I'm usually up between sort of 4:30 and 5 normally. But I'd come downstairs. I'd got myself my brew, like I said, first step, do something simple. I'd sat down at the table, you know, let's keep it simple, laid everything out on the kitchen table, and it literally covered this table. It's like a 4-seat table. So, you know, sizable space. And I just said, right, what we're going to do here? This is going to be a massive challenge, learning to deal with this, you know, this condition. How do I do it? And I went, well, I need something to keep me focused because this is going to be hard. And that's when I had that dawned on me that the line I used when I spoke in Parliament a few weeks ago in Scottish Parliament was, you know, the significance of the goal has to match the scale of the challenge. And that it kind of dawned on me that, and I went, well, there's only really one thing I can do, and that's stick with the games and go for gold. I've got to aim at a big target in order to get through this. And ultimately, that's what did it. And that was the morning I decided I was going to try and get the top spot. And I still did the other sports, but I didn't put as much effort into them, if that makes sense. The cycling got it all, you know. Mm-hmm. And the crazy part as well is I got so focused, so deliberately focused on it that what the doctors advise you when you get diagnosed is that the average diabetic should do a blood test, a finger prick test, 4 times a day, one before each meal and one before bed. That then helps you determine the insulin you need, and then you inject the insulin manually. And there's 5 injections a day I was taking, so one before each meal and another one every 12 hours. So essentially, that's 9 needles a day in a nutshell, right? And that's how it started that first week. I learned very quickly that I couldn't keep up with the rate of change in my blood sugars by just doing 4 tests a day. So by the end of the first week, that number had doubled. By the end of the second week, it doubled again. By the end of June, I was doing, I think the most number of tests I did in one day was 43 tests in one day. The doctors realized they couldn't keep up with the rate of learning I was having to do. So they fast tracked me to get what's called a continuous glucose monitor. It's like a button that sticks to the back of your arm or your leg or something, and it connects to your phone or to a little device that tells you your blood sugar. And that point was game changing. And the reason I bring that bit up is because a week or two later, the council had heard I was doing all this, which is how I'd made that contact to go to the school, you know, in the October. But at the end, I think it was the 3rd week in July. I think it was the 21st or 22nd or something of July. They'd asked me to go to the local sports centre to do a bit of PR for them, do a little video and interview, and tell them how I'd been using the equipment and how it'd been going and all that kind of stuff. And they did a little video interview, and they asked the usual sorts of questions. You know, how are you using the equipment? You know, how, you know, what are the benefits of it? You know, would you what would you say to anyone else getting into sport? Would they come and use it? Blah, usual stuff. But the last question they asked me was, and this is all on video. They said, "What are your aspirations? What do you want to achieve at the games?" And that was the point. I laid down the gauntlet. without waiting a beat, and this is all on video, you can Google it all up. Without waiting a beat, I literally went, "That's easy. I'm going there to win," and that was my answer, plain and simple. And I left it at that, and he had to prompt me and say, "Can you give us a bit more?" but yeah.
So going to questions. Going to questions, that is really interesting how you
it's a long story, sorry.
Your subconscious answers before your logic does. That is what are you going to achieve? So you said it, the gold, obviously, for me. No? So what is the main or the most memorable question you have being asked by a kid in a school?
So I wouldn't say there's one particular question, if I'm honest, because what happened after that first school, another school heard about how it had gone, and then I got asked to go to that school, and another school asked, and it just like a chain reaction. It just, it gradually grew around the whole area. But what I learned from that was that, because what I would do is I'd set all my stuff up on a table. I'd get after that first, complete fail of using the PowerPoint presentation, I just created a photo album, and I just basically showed them all the photographs and told them stories about what they saw. And I set all this up in the hall. And what they did was they brought each year out, and there's 7 primary years in primary school. So you get nursery, primary school, and secondary school in the UK. And primary school is for ages about sort of roughly 5 to 11, give or take, and it goes up in 7 years. And what they did was they brought each year out one at a time. And what I found over doing all the different schools is that each year seems to have a different preference of thinking, if that makes sense. A different line of questioning or things they'll focus on, or things they want to know about. And what I found, the one that always made me chuckle was, it was only primary 2 and 5 that would ask me, have I ever shot someone? Genuinely, it was those 2 years, and that stood out to me. It just made me chuckle, because you'd think some of the boys would want to ask about guns, this, tanks, that, shooting things stuff like that. You'd think they'd all want to know, but yeah, only ever primary 2 and primary 5 that asked, of all the schools I went to. But that's the bit that stood out. But no, there's no particular question that I remember specifically.
If you have to go to your teenager and whisper him, what would you allow yourself to do that you didn't do back then? What would you tell him?
I'd probably try and explain how critical it is to understand. To give you some context, so I've always sort of believed that there's 2 certainties in life, right? Up to the point where I was homeless, and waiting to figure out what finances were doing. I'd always believed there was 2 certainties in life. The obvious one, mortality. We're all going to, meet our maker, whatever we believe that to be, and the other one is change. Throughout life, something will happen, from childhood to adulthood, whatever. Changes happen, whether we want them to or not, whether we plan them or not, whatever. The 2 certainties will happen. That event taught me that there's a third thing. There are 3 things, certainties in life. The other one is dependency. We all have varying levels of dependency on an array of different things, from the air we breathe, the food we eat, the water we drink, those kind of the obvious ones, to the less obvious ones, like smartphones. The amount of dependency we have on, you see people walking around with headphones in and focused on the screens, and I don't know, the list goes on. There's whole different things you might be dependent on. Your car, the size of the house, the going for a walk to clear your head, and things like any number of different things you can call a dependency. And that lesson, that issue I had, having to sell the car and dealing with getting the house and everything, that taught me that I'd been too dependent on the army, too dependent on one thing. And the key thing about it is that the more dependent you make yourself on one thing, the more vulnerable you make yourself as well. Because if you lose that one thing, you are, excuse the French, but up shit creek without paddle, really. And that's exactly what happened to me with the military. I was too dependent on the military, and I'd taken that too much for granted, and it all failed. So the lesson, going back to your question, the lesson I would teach myself is understanding those 3 things. Understanding that dependency is all about taking accountability, taking control of the things you can control. So it's like I go back to the point I made about I don't believe in a perfect plan. I believe in a reasonable plan that will help weather the chaos. Because if I get up early in the morning, like I do, I get the important bits done first. So I sort my bills out, my finances out. I do my training, my physical training. I do the jobs around the house that I know need to be done, because I don't know what the day's going to bring. I don't know what chaos is going to ensue. You know, I've got 2 young kids. I call them terror bags, because you just don't know what mess they're going to make next. You know what I mean? But if I get it done, the important stuff done in the morning, I know it's done, if that makes sense. The rest of the chips of the day can fall where they may. I'm reducing the things I'm dependent on are taken care of, if that makes sense. But I've then learned to spread out all the dependencies, whereas before in the military I only had one, and that was the military, if that makes sense. So I would teach myself those 3 things. The key being the understanding of responsibility and accountability, so that I could reduce the number of dependencies much earlier in life. That's what I would tell myself. And not have to go through what I've gone through to figure it out, if that makes sense. Yeah.
But yeah, everything makes sense. So, David, I'm so pleased and honored to have you really here, that I'm so grateful that you shared your heart so openly, and I know that we can keep talking for 2 more hours. That's so interesting and so connection. No, you know that it's that sharing of your wisdom today is so valuable, I think, for me and for everyone. And at the end of the day, this conversation is a very powerful reminder that allowing ourselves to move forward isn't just a one-time decision. It's daily practice, adapting, changing, making decisions in the time. And one of the things that I like that I agree with you is give a lot of power to the voice within. Allow yourself to listen to yourself. Allow yourself to be you, and move, and life will show you a lot of paths. But at the end of the day, just give yourself permission to take up your space, to rest, to begin again, to, at the end of the day, is to allow yourself to be what you really meant to be and what you want to be. So thank you very much, David. And in one word, what would you take from this conversation?
Well, while you were saying that there, the one word that stands out to me is resilience. You know, resilience isn't a one-off thing. It's nothing glamorous. It's not something that you can just snap your fingers and suddenly get. It takes a mindset. You know, you've got to look at a challenge as an opportunity. You know, instead of looking at it and going, oh, this shit just happened to me. You know, everything's going wrong. You know, oh, I can't get anything right, or you know, this is all going to be problems, blah, blah, blah. Well, you know, so what? You know, so a good example is literally 3 weeks ago, my car was parked out in front of my house, and somebody crashed into it and then drove off. You know, and luckily we got the number plate, but that was it. And rather than panicking and worrying about it, I walked away and went, right, family's safe, everyone's all right, no one's been hurt. You know, I mean, I've got my insurance, that's all taken care of. And the plus side is I don't have to worry about paying to get it serviced, because it was due for its annual service 2 weeks later. And I was like, right, that car's written off. I don't have to worry about that. That's expensive. I don't have to worry about, you know. So, but because I had all the boxes ticked, some insurance squared away, you know, I had the tax and everything squared away, you know, all this stuff sorted. There was nothing to, you know,
amazing.
But don't focus on the negative. Focus on the good. Look for the opportunity and the challenge.
Resilience. Yeah, I will keep expression that you gave. I really like give him a kiss, no?
Yeah. Give it a kiss. Keep it stupidly simple. Yeah.
Keep it stupidly simple. Yeah. And you said keep it simple, understand the problem, halfway to the solution, embrace the change and the mistakes, and learn, adapt, and repeat. No?
The first key one though, is do something simple. So do something simple. The reason being is because that simple step forward, it starts the mind, that logical step towards a solution. It starts you on that path. So something so simple. You don't have to think
Keep
about it.
it.
Yeah. So like I go and get a brew. I mean, it's easy to put the kettle on and make a coffee, whatever, but that step forward, it starts that logical process towards a solution, you know, and then you keep it simple by breaking it down, if that makes sense. So yeah, so it's 5 steps.
And I
keep
love
it simple.
and I love that the word is keys.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's easy to remember to keep it simple. Thank you very much, David. Where you can find David Jarvis in his website, that is speakingsbc.com, or in all his social media platforms. And it was just such a pleasure and such an honor that have an amazing person, resilient, and with so much experience in life, that his life is not the only gold medal in the Invictus Games, but in life. So thank you very much, and see you soon. Bye.